They say your life flashes before your eyes when you're about to die. That's a lie. All I saw were his eyes, dark, unreadable, and colder than the rain that pelted against my windshield that night. I should have turned around the moment I saw his car parked outside her apartment. But I didn't. I parked across the street instead, engine running, heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. The lights in her window flickered as shadows moved behind the curtains. Laughing, maybe. Touching. Maybe worse. I stared for too long. I clenched my fists around the steering wheel, feeling every emotion rush in all at once. Rage, betrayal, grief, like a damn tidal wave, and I let it drown me. I wasn't supposed to be the girl who waited. The girl who begged. I used to have a spine, didn't I? I used to say I'd never let a man break me. But there I was, 26, staring at the scene of my own heartbreak like a cliché in some cheap paperback novel. My phone buzzed beside me. Ryan. Busy, talk later. I laughed. Out loud. And then I cried. The kind of cry that tears something raw from your chest. My sobs were so loud, I didn't even hear the thunder crack above me. He had said he was going to a late client meeting. Said he'd call afterward. I wore his favorite dress, cooked dinner, lit candles, the whole sad picture. All while he was with her. Aisha. His ex. The one he swore was toxic and obsessed. The one who couldn't let go. Apparently, she had and he hadn't. I don't remember making the decision to drive. I only remember the blur of headlights, the smear of red traffic lights through my tears, and the howling wind rattling the car like it wanted to suck me into the night. I sped through the streets like I could outrun the betrayal, like I could leave it behind in the city, with its lies and shattered promises. And then, metal, glass, silence. When I woke up, everything was white. Too white. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nose before the pain did. And then it all hit me, my legs, my ribs, my head. I tried to sit up, but something in my chest pulled tight like a scream, trying to escape. You're awake, a voice said softly. A nurse leaned over me, middle-aged, with kind eyes and tired lines on her face. You're lucky, she added, checking my vitals. A few inches to the left, and it would have crushed your lungs. Lucky. God, if that wasn't the joke of the century. I had a concussion, 3 fractured ribs, a broken ankle, and a dislocated shoulder. My car was totaled. A truck had hit me from the side after I ran a red light. No alcohol in my system, just heartbreak. Ryan didn't come. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. My mother came, tight-lipped and angry, as if she couldn't decide whether to comfort me or scold me. I didn't ask for him. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing that yes, the golden boy had failed me too. By the 3rd day, I was alone in that hospital room, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I had survived. And that's when it happened. The shift. It didn't come like thunder. It came quietly, like a whisper curled into the folds of my brain. This isn't how your story ends. I closed my eyes and imagined standing outside his apartment. Not crying, not waiting, but watching, learning, taking back what was mine. I left the hospital on the 6th day. Against medical advice, obviously. I signed the forms myself, ignored the nurses' protests, and limped out with bruises under my skin and a wildfire in my chest. My first stop was my apartment. It still smelled like him. His cologne clung to the pillows like a ghost. I walked through it in silence, grabbing only what I needed, my passport, cash, a hard drive, and one photograph of myself as a little girl. The rest? I left it all behind. I tossed my phone into the river that night. Watched it sink like all the promises he made. I didn't need it anymore. I didn't want people checking in or pretending to care. I didn't need their pity. I was done being the girl who waited. The girl who cried. I was going to disappear. The thing about vanishing is that it's easier than people think. We're all so traceable now, tied to phones, locations, social media, that the moment you cut all those strings, you become invisible. I moved to a small town 4 hours away, checked into a quiet inn under the name Mira Desai, and paid in cash. Nobody looked twice. The pain still clung to me, physically and emotionally. Some nights I screamed into my pillow, biting down so the innkeeper wouldn't hear. Other nights I lay awake, not moving, staring at the cracked ceiling and playing back every lie Ryan ever told me. I knew I'd been stupid, but I wasn't going to stay stupid. While my body healed, I began my research. I knew everything about Aisha from what he had told me, which meant I knew nothing. So I started digging. She had a modest social media presence, a blog from her college days, a LinkedIn page that hadn't been updated in a year. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Ryan was harder. He kept things clean, curated. But everyone has cracks. You just have to know where to look. I started following trails, friends, colleagues, tags, and old photos. I created fake accounts, pretended to be recruiters, old schoolmates. People gave up information easily when you flattered them enough. It was fascinating. By the time 2 months had passed, I knew more about their lives than they probably knew themselves. I watched from afar as they posted couple selfies, attended events, smiled with their perfect teeth, and filtered happiness. But behind those eyes, I could see the rot. Ryan hadn't changed. He wouldn't.
And Aisha?
She was too blinded by the thrill of winning to realize she was next in line for heartbreak. I wasn't jealous anymore. I was focused. It was on a Tuesday afternoon that I made the decision. I was sitting in a quiet library, laptop open, files spread in front of me. The librarian had just brought me tea, assuming I was a quiet freelancer or a student. But what I was building wasn't a thesis. It was a plan. I wasn't going to lash out blindly. That's what they expected from women like me, the scorned, the broken, the emotional.
No.
I would be methodical, strategic. The best revenge isn't loud. It's silent, precise, untraceable. They had taken everything from me. Now it was my turn. I checked into a new place that night, a studio apartment under a different alias. I began physical therapy, started working remotely for a small consulting firm under a third identity. I needed income, but I also needed skills, digital tools, cyber trails, encryption, voice modulation. The world of shadows is addictive once you learn to walk in it. One night, I caught myself smiling. Not the sad, broken smile I'd worn in the hospital. This was something new.
Sharp.
Dangerous. That night, I whispered to the girl I used to be. You died in that crash. I survived. And survival? It was only the beginning. When people think about disappearing, they think it means running away, vanishing into the woods, or hopping on a plane to some lawless country where no one asks questions. But that's not how you disappear. Not if you want to disappear well. You don't run. You erase. You wipe your scent off every surface you've ever touched. You bleed out slowly until you're nothing but memory and shadow. That's what I did. That's what I had to do. The woman I used to be, Anaya Kapoor, had died the night of the accident. The doctors brought back her body, but they never noticed the soul inside had crawled out through the cracks and vanished into something colder, sharper, more dangerous. My first step was silence. No texts. No calls. No social media logins. Not even a burner phone. That first month, I didn't speak to a single person who knew my name. Not even my mother. Especially not her. My bank accounts sat untouched. I had withdrawn everything before I disappeared, and I paid cash for everything, groceries, the rent at the inn, my laptop, the new ID I bought from a man named Rafiq, who smelled like smoke and sarcasm. I didn't ask where he got it. He didn't ask what I needed it for. The name he gave me was Meher Malik. I liked the way it sounded in my mouth, soft, almost sweet, like something innocent. It was the perfect disguise. The second step was reinvention. I knew the old me wouldn't survive in this world I was entering. She was too trusting.
Too naive. So I tore her down piece by piece.
No more soft edges, no more nervous glances or apologetic smiles. I began every morning with a routine. Wake at 5. Physical therapy. Cold shower. Research. Practice. More research. I practiced new accents. Rehearsed backstories. Studied people, not in the way you watch them, but in the way you break them apart. I watched videos of interrogation footage. body language breakdowns, lie detection tricks, manipulation, psychology. I devoured it all. And slowly I began to build Meher. She was quick with her tongue, calm under pressure, and knew how to turn a compliment into a weapon. She was a ghost, yes, but the kind that haunted back. 2 months into my disappearance, I moved again, this time to a basement studio in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Pune. It was run by an old couple who liked that I paid cash and didn't ask many questions. I told them I was a freelance designer working on confidential projects. They believed me, or they pretended to. I didn't care either way. This was where I set up my first real workspace. Nothing flashy, just a desk, 2 laptops, a prepaid Wi-Fi router, and a corkboard I pinned maps and photos to like some unhinged detective in a Netflix crime drama. At the center of that board were 2 names written in thick black marker. Ryan Shah, Aisha Faruqi. The liars, the lovers, the targets. Ryan hadn't changed since the accident. Still the same smug smile in every Instagram post. Still telling the world how grateful he was to have found peace after difficult times. His captions were vague enough to sound profound, fake enough to make me want to throw my screen across the room. He was still working at the same firm, still living in the same fancy high-rise, still chasing that upper-middle-class image of making it. What a joke. But Aisha? She had changed. She wasn't just back in his life, she was in his life. Posts together, vacations, dinner parties. She even appeared in a few promo photos for his firm. She had become his accessory, his redemption arc. Look, the world could say. He chose love after all. He's healing. Bullsh *T. I wasn't jealous. Not anymore. It wasn't about wanting him. It was about principle, about betrayal. He should have been in that hospital room with me. Should have been at my side, not in her bed. And she had known. She always knew. She'd just waited for the moment to strike.
And now
it was my turn. I started with Aisha. She was the weaker link. Too emotionally involved, too wrapped in the fantasy of winning him back. I needed to understand how she moved, how she thought, what scared her. So I watched. I tracked her daily routine using public posts, work check-ins, tag locations. I memorized her coffee order, her gym schedule, the stores she liked. She wasn't careful. People like her never are. I created fake profiles and messaged her under different names, some flirtatious, some friendly, some anonymous. I studied how she responded, what caught her attention, what made her uncomfortable, what made her angry. She was easy to read. Pretty, polished, but riddled with insecurity. She double-checked compliments. Took hours to respond to anything critical. She changed her tone depending on who she thought she was talking to. She wanted to be liked. That would be her undoing. I began planting seeds. A few anonymous messages. Slightly too specific to be random. A picture of her leaving the gym, sent from a fake number. A screenshot of Ryan's old texts with me, heavily edited, but just real enough to make her doubt. Nothing explosive yet. Just whispers. Ghosts in the wires. I wanted her to feel it before she saw it. While I worked on her mind, I began building the next layer of my identity. A professional one. I knew I'd need access to certain systems eventually. Work emails, personal data, accounts. So I began freelancing under a false digital identity as a cybersecurity consultant. People are shockingly careless with their digital lives. It didn't take long before I had access to tools, clients, forums. I kept everything clean, covered, encrypted. I wasn't just disappearing anymore. I was becoming someone new. The world thinks revenge is emotional, but real revenge is a science. It's not about anger. It's about calculation. It's about making sure they never see it coming, and when they do, it's too late to run. By the 4th month, I had everything I needed to begin. Aisha's routines, Ryan's secrets, their passwords, their patterns. I even had a burner phone that mirrored their social media feeds in real time. I watched as their perfect little world continued spinning, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath them. And on one particular night, something caught my eye. Ryan at a bar. Smiling. Hand around a woman who wasn't Aisha. His eyes just a little too focused. Her hand just a little too familiar. Bingo. I followed the woman digitally. She had a public profile, new to the city, bartender, amateur poet. Her captions were flirtatious, and in one of them, Ryan had liked the post with a fire emoji. God, he made it so easy. I screenshotted everything. Every comment, every DM I could intercept. I knew exactly what I'd do with them. Not yet, though. This wasn't the time for fire. This was still the time for frost. I remember the exact moment I knew I had truly disappeared. It was a Thursday morning. I was walking down a crowded street, headphones in, hood up, invisible. A news alert buzzed on my phone. A car accident. Woman in her 20s. Fatal. For a second, my heart skipped. Then I smiled. Because I knew, for just a moment, someone who knew me would see that headline and wonder.
And that was enough. I didn't miss my old life.
I didn't miss the friends who stopped calling. I didn't miss the job that drained me, or the mother who never approved, or the boyfriend who only loved the version of me that didn't ask for anything. I didn't miss love either. Love was a lie. A performance. A script written by people who wanted you to believe you were safe, until they walked out in the middle of the second act and left you bleeding on the stage. No, I didn't miss love. But I missed control. And now I was taking it back. The final step in my disappearance wasn't about location or legality. It was internal. It was when I looked in the mirror and didn't see Anaya anymore. When I no longer flinched at the memories. When I could watch old videos of us together and feel nothing. That was when I knew I was ready. Ready to stop disappearing. Ready to start appearing again, just not as me. As Meher. As the woman who would bring everything crashing down. They say the human body regenerates itself every 7 years, cell by cell, layer by layer, until the person you used to be is gone entirely. But I couldn't wait that long. I rebuilt myself in 6 months. Not just my name or my voice or my walk. I rebuilt my mind. I scraped away everything soft, everything that had once believed in people like Ryan. Everything that had loved too easily and forgiven too often. Anaya died the night of the crash. Meher was born in the ruins. And Meher was not here to heal. She was here to destroy. It started with the mirror. There was a time when I used to study myself with curiosity, wondering if I was pretty enough, smart enough to make someone stay. Now, when I looked, I wasn't asking anymore. I was sculpting. I dyed my hair darker, almost black, let it grow longer to frame my face like a weapon. I wore contacts, light gray, sharp, unsettling. My skin, once left bare and soft, now held edges, sharper brows, sculpted cheekbones, a mouth that only ever half smiled. I looked like the woman he would chase, but not recognize.
Perfect.
The next step was voice and accent training. I studied regional dialects until I could flip between them like a switch. I gave Meher a slight northern lilt, polished but untraceable. The kind of accent that made people think you were important, expensive. The kind Ryan always liked to flirt with. I practiced conversations aloud.
Recorded them.
Played them back. Repeated them again. By the end of the second month, I had erased the softness from my tone. No more rising intonations. No more apologies buried in the syllables. Every word Meher spoke was measured, intentional. Every pause was a trap. To the outside world, I was a UX consultant. Freelance. Independent. Nomadic. No physical office, no real boss. It was the perfect cover, tech enough to stay in demand, flexible enough to keep my distance. I worked through encrypted platforms, used a mix of real and fake credentials, built up a reputation among small startups that never asked too many questions as long as you delivered fast and smooth. I got paid in crypto, mostly. Laundered it through a maze of wallets until it became clean, usable cash. I rented apartments under shell identities, used prepaid cards for everything, and never stayed in one place too long. I was becoming less a person and more a system, an operation, a ghost in heels. And I loved it. But building Meher wasn't just about hiding. It was about becoming someone he wanted. Because that was the game I was playing, not revenge from the outside.
No.
That would be too easy, too sudden. I didn't want to haunt him. I wanted to seduce him, break him from the inside, make him fall for me again without ever knowing who I really was, make him betray her the same way he betrayed me, and then rip it all away. So I studied him. Ryan liked women who didn't need him but made him feel necessary. He liked confidence but only in small doses, just enough to chase, not enough to challenge. He liked being admired, listened to, adored. He liked being the smartest man in the room. So I crafted Meher into his perfect reflection. She was successful, independent, and mysterious. She didn't chase. She didn't flatter. She let him lean in. She carried herself like someone who already had everything she wanted, and just maybe, he could be lucky enough to be part of that. I knew how to dress for him. Understated, but elegant. Gold hoops instead of silver. Lipstick 3 shades darker than natural. Never too much perfume. Just enough for him to notice something when I passed. He'd never stand a chance. Getting close to him wasn't hard. I knew which networking events he went to. I knew the bar his firm liked to host casual mixers at. I knew which friend was most likely to leave their guest list open. So when I walked into that rooftop party in late October, sheer black blouse, slitted trousers, the slightest scent of jasmine, I already knew he'd be there.
He was.
Standing by the bar, half bored, scrolling his phone. And when our eyes met across the room, I could see it. That flicker. That moment of unconscious recognition, like his soul had shivered, but his mind couldn't place it.
Good.
I approached the bar, ordered my drink, and let him make the first move. Interesting choice, he said, nodding to my whiskey neat. Not many women drink that without flinching. I tilted my head and smiled. And not many men open with lazy gender stereotypes. Yet here we are. He blinked, and then laughed, that charming, shallow laugh that used to make me melt. Now it just made me sharper.
Fair point, he said.
I'm Ryan. I looked at his outstretched hand like it was a question I didn't need to answer. Meher. He smiled again, the kind of smile men wear when they think they've found something worth chasing.
Hook. Line. Sink.
From that night on, the seduction was a dance. I never texted first. I answered when I felt like it. I gave him just enough interest to keep him chasing. And he chased hard. He messaged.
Called.
Sent coffee to my co-working space. Invited me to dinners I always rescheduled. Every time he got too close, I stepped just out of reach. And every time I did, he wanted more. Men like Ryan don't love. They possess. And Meher was designed to be just out of reach. He never brought up Aisha. Not once. It didn't surprise me. She was a convenience to him. A placeholder. Something safe and familiar.
But I
was the thrill. The danger. The unknown. It didn't take long before he was lying. Telling her he was working late. That he had meetings. That he was out of town. I knew she suspected something. Her posts grew vaguer. She stopped smiling in photos. I even saw her one night from across the street, staring up at his apartment like I once had, holding her phone and blinking back something hot and hurtful. Funny, isn't it? How betrayal tastes the same no matter who you are. But I didn't feel pity. Only justice. One night, Ryan and I ended up back at his place. He poured the wine. I let him touch my hand. I watched his eyes roam across my collarbone like it was treasure he thought he'd earned. And then, just when he leaned in, I pulled back. You don't get to have me, I whispered. Not yet. He looked like a boy who'd been denied candy. Why? Because I'm not like the other women you lied to, I said. His eyes darkened slightly. A flicker of doubt. A shiver of fear. I left before he could ask what I meant. Let it sit with him. Let it rot. The next morning, I sent Aisha a package. No return address. No note. Just a flash drive with a collection of screenshots, videos, messages, everything. From the first flirtation to the last lie. Let her see it. Let her feel it. Let her know she was never the winner. Just the next in line. By the time Ryan started unraveling, I was already steps ahead. I knew his habits better than he did. I knew when he was pretending to sleep, when he was actually working, and when he was lying just to feel powerful.
He didn't change.
Not even after what I'd done. But Aisha did. And she was the one I started watching more closely now. It began 3 days after I sent her the flash drive. I wasn't sure what would happen at first. Heartbreak.
Denial?
Confrontation? But Aisha surprised me. There were no public posts. No dramatic quotes about betrayal. No breakup selfies. Just silence. But silence can be loud if you know how to listen. She didn't go to work for 2 days. I know because I hacked her calendar. Her phone was offline more often. She deleted her Twitter. Blocked someone named Nicole, who I later realized was the mutual friend who'd introduced her to Ryan the first time. She was doing damage control. Internally. It was smarter than I expected. Almost impressive. So I watched. I followed her for the first time in person on a rainy Thursday. Hood up, umbrella in hand, a face in the crowd. She walked with her shoulders hunched, hands buried in the pockets of a long coat, lips chapped and makeup faded. She looked nothing like the confident, curated Aisha on Instagram. She looked real.
Tired.
Wounded. Maybe even angry. Good. She didn't know I was behind her, 2 blocks back, matching her every step. She didn't know I'd slipped a tracker into the lining of her laptop bag weeks ago at a cafe when I accidentally bumped into her and apologized with a warm smile and a tissue from my purse. She didn't know she was being followed. Everywhere. Always. Ryan, on the other hand, was spiraling and didn't even know it. He texted me constantly now. Calls, gifs, cryptic little messages about how no one had ever gotten under his skin like this. On the surface, he was still polished.
Charming.
He kept up the act for work, for friends, for whatever was left of his image. But I could see the cracks forming. He was paranoid. Asking vague questions. Wondering aloud if I had Googled him. If I knew things. Of course I knew things. I was the thing. But I just tilted my head, smiled, and said, "You're not that hard to read, Ryan." That shut him up for a while. A week later, Aisha posted a photo of a sunset. Caption: "Some things have to burn before they're reborn." I had to laugh. Was she talking about him? About herself?
About me?
I wasn't sure. So I decided it was time to make contact. I created a fake email account under the name Sanam Malik, one of those generic names that didn't set off alarms. The email itself was short. Just a screenshot of Ryan and the bartender he'd flirted with weeks ago, arm around her waist in a very unfriendly way. No words. No explanation. Then I sent her a message through WhatsApp from an untraceable number. "You think he stopped at you?" She read it within seconds. Then blocked the number. But the seed had been planted. The next day, she went to Ryan's office. I watched through the glass wall of the cafe across the street, sipping tea, eyes hidden behind dark lenses. She stormed past the receptionist, clutching a folder in her hand, probably the printouts.
Proof.
Or questions. Maybe both. She was in there for 30 minutes. When she came out, her face was unreadable. No tears. No shouting. Just cold. I felt something stir in me then. Not empathy. Respect. She wasn't collapsing. She was calculating. That night, Ryan called me.
Drunk.
I let it go to voicemail. Meher, hey. I don't know what's going on. Things are weird. Aisha's being weird. I think she's, God, I don't know, checking up on me or something. You haven't said anything, right?
Right.
I smiled and deleted the message. The funny thing was, I hadn't even done anything overt to destroy them yet. Not really. I hadn't published anything. I hadn't sent files to his employer or hers. I hadn't even revealed my identity. All I'd done was shift the balance. A few whispers. A few triggers. And everything else had started collapsing on its own. But that's how it works, doesn't it? People like them, they build their lives on weak scaffolding. All you have to do is remove a single screw, and everything starts to shake. 2 weeks later, I followed Aisha to a clinic. She stayed inside for 45 minutes. When she left, she looked pale, almost hollow. Something inside me twisted then, against my will. Was she pregnant? I didn't want to know. I did. but I didn't. I went home that night, sat in the dark for an hour, and stared at the map on my corkboard. So many lines. So many pins. It all looked so organized. So meticulous. But for the first time, I felt off. I'd planned this revenge for so long. Every step. Every move. I had predicted their reactions, their unraveling. But I hadn't accounted for this. For what it would feel like to see her broken and him confused and realize I wasn't sure who the real enemy was anymore.
No. No.
That was weakness talking. This wasn't about sympathy. It was about truth. And the truth was Ryan destroyed me. He used me, lied to me, made me doubt my own sanity, and walked away without a scratch. He deserved every shadow that followed him.
And Aisha?
She knew.
She had to know. She saw the signs.
Chose to ignore them. Chose him anyway. That made her an accomplice. And in war, accomplices fall too. So I stepped it up. The next phase of my plan required proximity, so I began applying for short-term contracts at the firm Ryan worked with. Not directly under him. That would have been too obvious. But close enough that he'd hear my name in meetings, see my name on reports, feel my presence like a ghost dragging its nails down the back of his mind. I got the position easily. My resume, fake but spotless, did the talking. Tech industry loves mystery as long as it comes with skill. He spotted me in the elevator on day 3. "Meher?" he asked, startled. I smiled politely.
Hi, Ryan.
Fancy seeing you here. You work here now? Contract. Only for a few weeks. His smile wavered. That's great. It wasn't. He was sweating through his collar. By week 2, I had his schedule memorized again. I timed accidental run-ins. I began casually dropping lines in meetings that hinted at things he'd told me in private. Not enough to raise alarms. Just enough to make him question how much I knew.
And Aisha?
She was quiet, distant, still posting those vague captions, still showing up in group photos. But her eyes weren't in them anymore. They were always off camera, looking at something no one else could see. She'd stopped trusting him, which meant she was halfway to being done. The final move, for now, was a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just 5 words. He hasn't told you everything. I mailed it to Aisha's office. I knew she'd open it at her desk, behind tinted glass. I knew it would sit in her mind like a riddle. I didn't need her to act on it. I just needed her to wonder. Because wondering turns into watching. Watching turns into paranoia. And paranoia? That eats a person alive. They still hadn't seen me for what I was.
Not yet.
To them, I was still a woman Ryan was seeing on the side. Still a flirtation. Still a threat, yes, but not a force. Not a weapon. But soon they'd know. And when they finally figured out who I really was, it would be far too late to stop me. There's a moment, right before someone falls for you, where they hesitate, just for a second. A flicker in their eyes. Like they're standing on the edge of a cliff and trying to decide whether the drop will kill them or make them feel alive. Ryan was at that edge. And I was the wind at his back. He had never been good at hiding his desire. Even when we were together, when I was still Anaya, his eyes wandered before his conscience did. He was a man addicted to the thrill of new attention. And I had become his favorite drug again. Just in a different package. Meher wasn't the girl who loved him. She was the woman who tempted him. And he had no idea they were the same person. That made it so much easier to pull the strings. I let him pursue me. Never too eagerly. Never too slowly. A carefully orchestrated game of push and pull. Responding just late enough to leave him uncertain. Agreeing to meet, then canceling at the last second. Giving him glimpses of closeness, a lingering touch, a loaded look, and then turning cold. I was a storm dressed as a promise. And he was drowning in it. The more I denied him, the more he chased. Like a man possessed. It made him reckless. It made him vulnerable. It made him mine. We met for drinks one Friday night. His suggestion, of course. I let him choose the place, a low-lit lounge in a quiet corner of the city, the kind that pretends it's exclusive just because the lights are dim and the chairs are leather. He was already there when I arrived, nervously sipping whiskey, tapping his fingers on the table. He stood too fast when he saw me, like a teenager on a first date. Meher, he said, voice thick with unspoken thoughts. I let him look at me. The satin dress, the dark lipstick, the calm smile that didn't reach my eyes. You're early, I said. I didn't want to be late. He was trying. For once. And it only made me hate him more. We talked. Or rather, he talked. About work. About how things had been weird lately. About a friend who'd betrayed his trust. About women who didn't understand him. I listened with the patience of a snake. He didn't mention Aisha once. And I didn't ask. That was the trap. I gave him the illusion of privacy, of freedom, like his sins had no witnesses. But I was the witness. I had been there for every lie, every excuse, every time he texted her while kissing me. And now he was doing it all over again. Like history wasn't just repeating, it was mocking itself. Eventually, he leaned in and said, "You're not like the others, Meher." I tilted my head. No. You don't need anything from me.
Wrong.
I needed everything. I needed his soul laid bare. I needed him broken down to his most pathetic, trembling self. I needed him to feel what it was like to be discarded, destroyed, forgotten. But I smiled and said, "That's what makes it fun, doesn't it?" We slept together that night. Not because I wanted to. Not because I missed him.
Because it was part of the game.
Because seduction is the most dangerous kind of power, the kind that feels like surrender, but is actually conquest. I let him kiss me like I was his escape. I let him whisper things he thought were new. I let him believe I was falling. Then I watched him sleep, sprawled across the sheets like a man who believed he'd won something. And I smiled in the dark. Because the only thing he'd won was the countdown to his own destruction. The next morning, I left without a word. No note. No kiss. No breakfast. I wanted him to wake up alone. To feel the silence like a punishment. He texted me an hour later. "Ryan, last night was something." I didn't reply. He called in the evening.
Twice.
I let it ring. By day 3, he was unraveling again. "Ryan, did I do something wrong? Ryan, can we talk? Ryan, I miss you." Pathetic. And yet perfect. That weekend I made my next move. I had been collecting digital evidence for months. Passwords, messages, photos. I had enough to rip his image to pieces. But it was still too early. I wasn't done twisting the knife yet. So, I turned my attention back to Aisha. Her silence had turned into action. She'd started deleting old posts, removing tagged photos, rewriting her digital identity. She was either trying to cleanse herself or hide something. I needed to know which. So I sent her another message. This time through a new identity. A journalist named Neha Rao, working on an investigative story about toxic relationships in corporate India. I told her Ryan's name had come up. I told her she wasn't alone. And I asked if she'd be willing to talk, anonymously, of course.
She didn't reply.
But she read it.
Twice.
Which meant I had her attention. A few days later, I saw them together again. A restaurant. Public, polite, polished. The perfect performance of a couple pretending things weren't falling apart behind closed doors. But their body language betrayed them. She kept glancing at her phone. He kept glancing at the waitress. They didn't touch once. By dessert, Aisha stood up and left. Ryan didn't follow her for 5 full minutes. Even then, he didn't run. He walked. Slowly. That's when I knew. They were breaking. And I wasn't even done yet. He called me again that night. "Meher, I can't stop thinking about you." I stayed silent. "I know it's fast, but I feel something with you. Something I've never felt before."
Lie.
"You're different. You see me."
Yes.
I saw him perfectly. And that's what terrified him. "I want to be with you." I waited 3 seconds, then said, "Why?" He stuttered. Fumbled. Tried to say something poetic.
Failed.
I let the silence eat him alive. Then I whispered, "I'll think about it."
Click.
I didn't intend to fall into routine with him, but I did. Midnight calls. Late night drives. secret meetings in hotel rooms that smelled like regrets. He never asked about the future. He never mentioned Aisha again. He didn't need to. I could see it in his eyes. He thought he'd traded up. That I was his escape, his savior. And I played the part. Not because I believed it, but because he did. And people in love will destroy themselves without you lifting a finger. At work, I started dropping subtle bombs. I accidentally left a file open on a shared drive that showed discrepancies in his reports. I sent an anonymous email to HR flagging his questionable conduct. I booked fake meetings in his calendar and watched him flounder. He didn't know where the chaos was coming from, because it wasn't loud. It was precise. He looked tired, paranoid, stressed.
Good.
At home, I continued the seduction. He grew clingy,
Needy.
the man who once bragged about never getting attached was now begging for time, for validation, for affection. I gave him just enough to keep him addicted, then pulled it away again. One night, as we lay tangled in sheets and silence, he said something I didn't expect. "You scare me." I turned my head, met his eyes. "Why?" "I don't know who you are sometimes." My pulse didn't even flicker. "Maybe you're not supposed to," I said. He blinked, and for the first time, I think a part of him knew, not the whole truth.
Not yet.
But somewhere deep inside, something had started to itch.
To burn.
It was time to end the game. Not the plan, just this chapter of it. So, I vanished. No call. No message. No trace. I left my apartment. Deleted the number. Wiped the burner phone.
Quit the contract at his firm.
Moved to another city under another name. I watched from a distance as he spiraled. He called old friends. Reached out to coworkers. Messaged every contact on his list with any variation of my name. But he couldn't find me, because I was never really there. Meher had never existed. Just like his version of love never had. I wasn't done with him. Not even close. But I wanted him to sit in the ruin for a while. Let it sink in. Let him ask himself. Was she real? Was I dreaming? Did I imagine her? Let him go mad retracing every step, every kiss, every lie. Let him wonder. Because that's where guilt lives. And guilt is the softest place to stab a knife. It had been weeks since I disappeared from Ryan's life again. But this time, I wasn't just gone. I was watching. He didn't know it, but I'd left behind breadcrumbs. A corrupted folder on his laptop. A synced cloud backup set to ping me anytime he added a new contact. And more importantly, I still had access to Aisha's digital trail, her devices, her emails, even her fitness app. The girl really should have updated her passwords. I watched the storm settle into their lives like dust after a bomb blast. No more posts. No more dates. No photos, no quotes. Silence. Again. And just like before, silence told me everything I needed to know. They were no longer in sync. One Thursday afternoon, Aisha visited a therapist's office in Lower Parel. She stayed for exactly 53 minutes. Later that night, she Googled phrases like, how to know if you're being gaslit and emotional trauma symptoms. She also downloaded a voice recorder app. I smiled. She wasn't unraveling. She was preparing.
Good.
I wanted her angry. I wanted her to start pulling at the threads. Because I'd already laced her life with rot. She just didn't know it yet. The first real crack came from a whisper. An email from a concerned friend, sent to her work inbox. No signature. No proof. Just 3 words. He's still lying. I attached nothing, linked nothing. I didn't need to. Suspicion is a fire that feeds itself. She opened it 6 times. Forwarded it to her personal address. Then deleted it. But it stayed with her. I could tell. She changed her daily route. Started taking calls in private. Hid her phone when walking into rooms. She was hunting. And being hunted. All at once. And I made sure she never figured out which was which. Next came the photos. I had a courier deliver them to her office, sealed in a plain brown envelope. Dozens of glossy, high-definition images. All of Ryan. With other women. At hotels, in cafes, In elevators. Some real. Some AI-enhanced. All damning. She wouldn't know the difference. I didn't need the truth on my side. I only needed doubt. That night, Aisha didn't go home. She checked into a hotel under a different name. One of her old university aliases, which I only discovered because she once blogged about it during a creative writing phase. The irony of her own words being used to find her wasn't lost on me. She stayed offline for 24 hours. When she reappeared, something in her had shifted. The soft tension in her shoulders had hardened into something sharp. Her eyes looked darker. Her smiles thinner. She had made a decision. But what she didn't know was that I'd already made mine. I started tampering with her life. Little things, barely noticeable. I used her work login to send emails she didn't remember writing, one rude, one flirtatious, one just odd. I installed a tracker into her fitness app and began logging strange nighttime walks she never took. I called her from unknown numbers and hung up as soon as she answered. I wasn't trying to expose her. I was trying to make her question herself. I followed her on a Sunday. She was going to meet a friend, Tanya, an old college roommate. I watched from across the cafe as she leaned in, speaking too quickly, her hands shaking around a cup of green tea. She looked scared. Not of someone. Of something inside her.
And Tanya?
She just nodded like a friend would, sympathetic but unsure. Aisha wasn't sure what was happening, which meant I was succeeding. The best revenge is not chaos. It's control.
And I had it now.
I sent her one more gift. The last one she'd received from Meher. This time it was a video. Security footage from the same hotel she and Ryan once celebrated their fake anniversary at. Only this time, it showed him checking in with someone else. Again doctored. But only slightly. Just enough to be believable. And underneath it, I added a note. Do you see it now? She watched it 5 times. Then deleted everything on her phone. Reset her iCloud. Blocked every number she didn't recognize. But it was already too late. I had crawled into her head like smoke under a locked door. And I wasn't leaving. That weekend, she confronted Ryan. I wasn't there, of course. But I had audio. The apartment still had one of the bugs I planted when I visited, disguised as a button on the back of a dusty picture frame. He never noticed. Aisha, voice shaking. How many more lies are there? Ryan. What are you talking about? Aisha. The hotels. The emails. The women. The games. Ryan. You're being paranoid. None of that is. Where are you getting this? Aisha. Doesn't matter. It's real. Ryan. You're being manipulated. Aisha, quiet maybe, but not by who you think. Then a long silence. Then a crash. She left. He didn't chase her. After that, she vanished. No posts. No updates. No location pings. Even her work profile went dark. She ghosted the world the same way I had. And for a moment I wondered, was she learning? Or had she finally broken? Then something unexpected happened. She sent me an email. Not to Meher. To Sanam Malik, the fake journalist I created.
Aisha.
I'm ready to talk. But not over email. In person. No cameras. No recordings. Just the truth. I need to understand what's happening to me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A part of me, the broken, bleeding part that still remembered what it was like to wake up in that hospital alone, wanted to meet her. To see her eyes. To see if she knew. To see if she hated me yet. But Meher was gone. And I couldn't risk stepping out of the shadows.
Not yet.
So I waited.
And watched.
That week, Aisha filed for a leave of absence. From work, from life. I saw her one last time in a bookstore alone, clutching a self-help book like it was a lifeline. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked like someone preparing for war. And for the first time since this game began, I wasn't sure who the real threat was anymore. It's funny, really. I thought I was dismantling her life.
Piece by piece.
But maybe, just maybe, I was forging something stronger in her. A woman who no longer wanted to be saved. A woman who wanted the truth. And the truth? It was coming for both of us. Some people burn when you hurt them. Others rot. Ryan? He crumbled. Not all at once. No, that would have been a mercy. He disintegrated in pieces, like a statue abandoned in the rain, cracks spreading across his perfect surface until the whole thing collapsed under its own weight. And I was the storm. It began quietly, the way most destruction does. The first email went to his firm's HR department. Anonymous, encrypted. It included timestamped screenshots of inappropriate messages he'd sent to 3 different women, none of them Aisha, and none of them Meher. Some real. Some AI crafted to match his tone, spelling, and signature perfectly. He always was a lazy texter. No punctuation. Too many ha-has. Easy to mimic. I included one more thing, a video file, taken in a hotel hallway. His arm wrapped around a woman who wasn't his girlfriend, walking into a room with a Do Not Disturb sign already hanging on the handle. You could only see his profile. But that was enough. I knew how the firm worked. Corporate values, diversity, no tolerance policy on harassment and misconduct. They wouldn't fire him outright, not yet. But the process would begin. The whispers, the meetings, the suspensions. I wanted him to feel it in slow motion. Because fear is sharpest when it comes dressed as doubt. The second blow was financial. I had access to his cloud storage, his banking PDFs, his investment tracking spreadsheets. I didn't drain his money, not immediately. That would have been too dramatic, too obvious. Instead, I redirected small payments, set up phantom subscriptions, created a pattern of mistaken fund transfers that he'd think were his own fault. By the time he noticed, he would have lost just enough to feel panic, but not enough to trace. And panic was the point, because panic makes you sloppy. And Ryan was never good under pressure. Then came the professional embarrassment. I accidentally sent a draft of his upcoming presentation, riddled with errors and sensitive data, to his clients under his name. It cost him 1 contract, then 2. A concerned intern, me, again under a burner alias, filed a complaint with the firm's ethics committee, citing behavior that made her uncomfortable and suggestive comments. I didn't need them to fire him yet. I just needed them to watch him, to question him, so that when the real evidence hit, the kind that couldn't be denied, no one would defend him, not even himself. By the 3rd week, he was calling me again. Voicemails filled with desperation. Texts that swung between flirty and furious. Ryan. Meher. Where the hell are you? Ryan. I need to talk to you. Things are falling apart. Ryan. Did you tell anyone about us? Did Aisha talk to you? Ryan. I swear to God, if this is your idea of a joke. I never responded. I wanted him to scream into the void. I wanted him to feel abandoned, the way I had felt in that hospital bed. The way Aisha had felt when he lied to her face. He'd left both of us bleeding. Now it was his turn. The media hit next. I'd been saving it, waiting for the right moment. A small blog, niche audience, but just the right reach. The story was titled, The Golden Boy's Tarnish, Allegations Surface Against Corporate Rising Star. The writer? Another alias of mine, of course. Tanya Kulkarni, freelance journalist, tech industry watchdog. I'd been building her credibility online for months. Fake reviews, LinkedIn posts, even a Medium article or 2. The story was vague enough to avoid legal takedown, but sharp enough to stain. No names, but clear enough for those who knew him. Anonymous sources. Whispers of manipulation. DMs, hotel visits. A pattern of behavior. I shared it in the right circles. Watched it spread like smoke under a locked door. At first, he ignored it. Typical Ryan move. But when clients started pulling back, when a podcast host canceled his guest appearance, when a LinkedIn recruiter quietly withdrew their offer, he started losing sleep. I knew because he stopped going to the gym, started missing meetings, ordered food past midnight. He looked rough, puffy-eyed, unshaven, slower to smile. The cracks weren't just showing anymore. They were gaping open.
And Aisha?
She wasn't answering his calls anymore. She'd moved out of the apartment, taken her things, changed her number. Quietly, cleanly. I don't know where she went, but I knew she was watching just like I was. Maybe she even smiled when she saw that article. Maybe, for once, she realized she hadn't been the only one. We'd both been pieces on his chessboard. Now he was the one being played. The next phase was deeper, more personal. I messaged one of his oldest friends, Karen, from an anonymous account. Told him to ask Ryan about what happened between him and that intern. Then I sent Ryan a message from the same account. You know what you did. That was all. But it was enough. He blocked the number. Deleted the message. But the paranoia didn't leave. Because when you've spent your whole life building a perfect version of yourself, the idea that someone knows the truth, that's the most terrifying thing in the world. One night, I followed him again. He went to a bar alone. Drank too fast. Didn't make eye contact with anyone. Checked his phone 20 times in an hour. I watched from a booth behind him, my hair tied up, glasses on, dressed too plain for anyone to notice. He was unraveling. But he still didn't see me. That was the part that thrilled me most. That he still had no idea who I was. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Vindicated. But what I felt was colder.
Cleaner.
I felt done. He wasn't worth hatred anymore. He was just a man. A man who built his castle on lies, and now stood choking on the dust of its ruins. There was nothing left to burn. But before I left for good, I had one more move. A final letter. Handwritten. Untraceable. Sealed in black paper. I dropped it into the mail slot of his apartment building myself. It said, Ryan, I told you once.
You don't get to have me.
Now you don't even get to know who I was. You think women like me disappear. But we don't. We evolve. You should have looked closer. Anaya. I never saw him after that. But I heard through channels that he took an indefinite leave from work. That he moved back in with his parents for mental health reasons. That he stopped answering texts from his friends, stopped showing up to the parties, the launches, the fake high life. They said he looked hollow. Not broken. Just empty. Like he knew something had been taken from him, but couldn't name what it was. And he was right. I'd taken everything. I returned to the city, once more, just for a night. Checked into a hotel. Breathed in the familiar skyline, the pollution and ambition and greed woven into its streets. I walked past our old apartment, the one where I used to wait for him to come home. It looked smaller now, quieter. The ghost of who I had been tried to rise in my chest. But I didn't let her. She wasn't welcome anymore. When I boarded the train out of the city the next morning, I didn't look back. Because I had done what I came to do. I had ruined Ryan Shaw. Not with violence. Not with noise. But with silence. With precision. With truth disguised as lies, and lies dressed as justice. He would spend the rest of his life wondering when the next strike would fall. But it wouldn't. Because I was done. I got the message on a Tuesday. No name. No signature. Just a subject line. We should talk. The email was short. Barely 2 lines. You're not the only one who disappeared. Meet me where it started. There was an address.
A time.
And I already knew who it was from.
Aisha.
She'd always been smarter than I gave her credit for. While Ryan unraveled, she had gone silent. Not from fear, but from clarity. She'd stopped reacting, stopped defending, stopped looking over her shoulder. Because she wasn't scared anymore. She had seen the shape of the ghost following her. And now, she wanted to face it. Face me. The meeting place was a rooftop cafe. The same one where Ryan and I had celebrated his promotion. Back when we were happy. When I thought our love was unshakable. The irony stung. But I went. I wore black. Minimal makeup. No aliases this time. It would be the last time I ever played a role. Because for once, I needed to show up as me. She was already there when I arrived. Hair pulled back, no eyeliner, a book resting on the table like she'd come early and pretended to read. But when she looked up at me, there was no pretending in her eyes. No rage. No tears. Just understanding. That was worse than anger. Anger I could have handled. This meant she knew everything. Anaya, she said quietly. Or Do you prefer meher now? I didn't flinch. Anaya is fine. We sat in silence for a moment. The city roared beneath us, cars honking, lives moving forward. And here we were, stuck in a story that should have ended long ago. She sipped her tea. I figured it out a few weeks ago, she said. After the last message. It wasn't the handwriting or the phrasing. It was the silence. The kind of silence that only someone like us knows how to use. I gave a small smile. Smart. I always was, she said. He just never noticed. We sat across from each other like survivors of the same war, comparing wounds. She looked thinner, stronger. I wondered what I looked like to her. A villain? A reflection? Maybe both. You destroyed him, she said eventually.
I didn't respond.
You broke him in ways I didn't even think were possible. I didn't lie to him, I said. He did that all on his own. No, she said. You just turned every lie into a dagger. She wasn't wrong. But you didn't do it for justice, she continued. You did it because you were hurt. Because you wanted someone else to hurt too. I met her eyes. Wouldn't you? She paused. Then nodded. I did. For a long time. We talked. For hours. About him. About the games. About how we'd both built our identities around being the one who mattered most to a man who didn't know how to love anyone but himself. She told me about the months after he and I first broke up, how he had come back to her, promising he'd changed, that I'd been the mistake. He made me feel like the victory prize, she said. But it wasn't love. It was just his ego needing a mirror. I told her about the hospital, the crash, the silence that followed. About how his absence that night changed the chemistry in my blood. Grief rewires you, I said. It rewrote me completely. And then you rewrote him, she said. There was a pause. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. What now? I leaned back, looked up at the sky. It was cloudy, the sun hiding, like it didn't want to witness what we were becoming. I'm done, I said. With him. With the game. With all of it. She watched me carefully. That's a nice thought. But women like us don't get clean endings, Anaya. We get aftermath. She was right again. Because when the revenge ends, all that's left is you. Your choices. Your silence. The broken pieces no one else can see. I didn't do this to punish you, I told her. You were collateral. And I hate that. But it's true. She didn't flinch. Do you want me to apologize? Do you want me to apologize? No, she said. Because I would have done the same thing if I were you. A long silence stretched between us. Heavy, honest. But I didn't, she added quietly. And maybe that's what scares you. I looked away. It did. Because no matter how much I'd rebuilt, part of me still lived in the wreckage. Part of me still clung to the belief that revenge was strength. But maybe real strength was walking away, without fire in your hands. I don't want revenge anymore, Aisha said, finishing her tea. I want peace. I envied her, because I wasn't sure I knew what peace felt like anymore. But, she said, if you ever come back into his life, if you ever touch mine again. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Her silence was sharper than any threat. We stood up at the same time. Two ghosts in the same city, finally acknowledging each other. What will you do now? I asked. She shrugged. Disappear. For real this time. But not to hide. To live. I nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. Here. I opened it. Inside was a photo. Me and Ryan. From over a year ago. Smiling. In love. Except there was something odd about it. The angle. The distance. It hadn't been taken by either of us. I took it, Aisha said. Back when he was still choosing me. Back when I still believed I could win. I looked at the image again, chilled. Why give it to me now? Because I don't want it anymore. And because I want you to see what you looked like, back when you were still capable of being in love. I said nothing. She left. I stared at the photo long after she was gone. My face in the image was so bright. So full of belief. That girl was dead. But Maybe she didn't have to stay buried. Maybe I could reclaim something, not love, not innocence, but freedom. I left the city the next day. No plan, no destination, just a train ticket and a suitcase filled with what was mine. Not stolen identities, not blackmail, not burner phones or revenge. Just me, Anaya Kapoor.
Scarred. Changed.
But alive. Months passed. Ryan disappeared from headlines. His name faded from LinkedIn feeds. Rumors said he moved to a smaller city, started a consultancy. Alone. I never looked him up again. Aisha sent one postcard. No return address. Just a quote on the back. Some fires burn to destroy. Others burn to light the way. I pinned it to the wall of my new apartment. Sometimes I still hear the ghost of who I was. In the quiet, in the mirror. She whispers we got even. And I whisper back.
No.
We got free.
The end.